Haraku is a 39-year-old cancer patient who lived such a miserable life that he actually wanted to die. One day, his wish finally comes true, his heart monitor flatlines, and he dies instantly. After his death, Haraku finds himself in a strange place. At first, he assumes it must be heaven, but then, a god appears before him. The god explains that he's going to give Haraku a second chance at life, since his first one was so terrible. This time, he promises to grant him a healthy body that won't betray him like the old one. The god apologizes sincerely for letting Haraku live such a sad life. To make up for it, he asks if Haraku has any requests for his new life and body. Since this god can grant any wish imaginable, the possibilities are endless. But Haraku only has one request. He wants to live his next life as a farmer. The god blinks, surprised by such a strange request. Out of everything possible, farming. Still, Haraku explains that while stuck in the hospital, he once watched a show about farmers and thought they were cool. Amused, the god decides to grant the wish anyway. On top of that, he gives Haraku a bonus gift, the almighty farming tool, a tool with incredible powers. With that, the god transports him, and Haraku wakes up lying on the ground in the middle of a forest. The first thing he feels is excitement. He finally has a healthy body. For the first time in years, he can look forward to a peaceful, laid-back life as a farmer. Examining himself, he notices he looks a lot younger than before. Unfortunately, he also looks a lot uglier than he used to. To make it worse, the god spawned him in a dollar store outfit. Haraku sighs at his appearance, but brushes it off. Testing out the almighty farming tool, he summons a hoe. To his amazement, it lets him dig as many holes as he wants without ever getting tired. Impressed, Haraku starts exploring the forest, but reality quickly sets in. He needs somewhere safe to stay. After all, there's a good chance monsters or dangerous creatures could be lurking around. He stumbles upon a large, sturdy-looking tree and decides this would be a good spot to set up his base. But there's another problem: water. He can't find any rivers or wells nearby, and he'll need water to survive. So he summons his almighty farming tool again, which transforms into a shovel and starts digging. The tool is incredibly useful since it can change into many different things. The only limitation is that it can't become complicated machines. Still, it makes digging easy. Haraku keeps digging and digging until, finally, he strikes water. With that, he now has a well. Now that water is taken care of, the next priority is food. Oddly enough, even after all this digging, Haraku doesn't feel hungry at all. Still, he figures it would be smart to have food ready, just in case. He decides hunting will need to be added to his plans. For now, though, the main agenda is building a hut. Using the almighty farming tool, he chops down trees easily and cuts them into neat blocks of lumber, ready for construction. But once he starts, Haraku realizes building a hut is way harder than he expected. He starts thinking about all the factors that go into it: design, stability, materials, layout, and before he knows it, he's lost track of time. The sun is already setting. Haraku needs a light source fast. He tries summoning something like a flashlight or a lamp using the farming tool, but nothing comes out. Apparently, those don't fall under its farming jurisdiction. Another restriction from the god. He then tries summoning a magnifying glass and it works, but he quickly realizes it's useless at night, so he sets it aside. That night, Haraku digs a small hole in a tree and spends the night there. Sleeping is tough, though, so he keeps himself busy by making some wooden furniture. To his surprise, it turns out better than he expected. The next day, he clears out all the trees and bushes on his land so he can start cultivating it. Just as he's about to begin, a rabbit monster suddenly dashes at him with murderous intent. One swift strike from the almighty farming tool to its head is all it takes. Haraku then uses the monster's meat to prepare lunch for later that afternoon. Next on his agenda is building a toilet. At first, it offers little privacy, so he adds walls around it, making it more civilized. He spends the rest of the day cultivating the land to grow crops, and by sunset, he's accomplished a lot. However, he doesn't have any seeds yet. He decides to sleep that night and venture into the forest the next day to find seeds or fruit. When he wakes up, Haraku is surprised to see that plants have already started sprouting, even though he didn't plant any seeds. Clearly, this is the power of the almighty farming tool at work. To protect the crops from beasts like the rabbit monster, he builds a fence around the cultivation area. Haraku waters the plants every day, and they continue to grow rapidly. He isn't sure what kind of plant it is, but he hopes it's something edible. After a few more days of hard work, he successfully builds himself a log house. Halfway through, he gets so so tired he can't lift a log to the roof, so he digs a little into the ground to give himself more vertical space. The next day, while carrying out his usual farm duties, Haraku spots two giant dogs. At first, they seem aggressive, but they're actually friendly and in rough shape. Haraku welcomes them onto his land and feeds them some of the meat he has. One of the dogs has a big belly, so Haraku assumes she's either pregnant or just eats a lot. Taking care of these dogs makes him think back to the days when he always wanted a dog. Now, he's seriously considering keeping them around. Just then, the pregnant dog makes a poopy face, which Haraku interprets as a sign that she's about to give birth. He brings them into his log house and starts planning for the delivery, but he's never watched those nature documentaries, so he has no idea how to handle it. That evening, Haraku leaves the dogs in the log house and sleeps in the tree hole, thinking the dogs will prefer some privacy while delivering the puppies. The next day, he checks on them and finds that the puppies have been successfully born. They're surprisingly cute. Haraku had expected the dogs to leave once they gave birth, but they've grown attached to his home and don't want to leave. Realizing this, Haraku decides to build a bigger and better house for himself while leaving the log house for the dogs. Not long after, the crops are ready to harvest and they're actually tomatoes. Haraku tastes them and confirms they're definitely tomatoes. As for the dogs, he gives them names. The male is Kuro and the female is Yuki. Meanwhile, the god wonders how Haraku has been holding up since getting his new life, but that's when he realizes he screwed up again. He accidentally sent Haraku into a very dangerous forest, so dangerous that it's regarded as the forest of death. He realizes he has to bring him back immediately, but then remembers that would be an infraction of the rules, which clearly say he can't interfere with the life he's given someone. The god figures that Haraku is likely going to die in that world and return back to him. Then, when he does, he'll set things right. However, Haraku is doing a lot better than expected. He's been able to use the almighty farming tool to harvest several crops. The tool works by him imagining whatever he wants to cultivate, and then the seeds are sown into the ground automatically. They end up sprouting so fast that he doesn't even know what to do with all of them. All in all, Haraku realizes that he's only here thanks to the gods, which is why he built them a statue to honor them. That day, Haraku decides to try something new and plants some fruit-bearing trees. He figures that if this goes well, his diet will greatly improve. He once heard that fruit trees take years to bear, but he's still prepared to wait as long as it takes for them to bear. That aside, Kuro and Yuki have really kept Haraku company for the time he's been here. If not for them, he probably would have been really lonely. He notices they have horns on their heads, but doesn't think much of it. Since this is a new world and dogs here could just have horns, they've also been really helpful, often guiding him through the forest until he discovered a river, which he'll now be using as his main source of water. As for a means of transportation, he transformed his almighty farming tool into a wheelbarrow, which allows him to transport things as fast as he wants without getting tired. But the roads are a bit bumpy, so he knows he'll need to fix those eventually. It doesn't take long for winter to start approaching, and Haraku figures he needs to start making preparations for it. He tries using the pelt from rabbit monsters, but those stink really bad. With that, his only option is to light his fire and stay inside his hut. Then, one day, he randomly comes across a spider who is able to use his spider webs to make good cloth and even clothes. Haraku figures the spider would be useful and adds him to the squad, giving him the name Zabuton. Zabuton is able to make a cool jacket for Haraku, which he'll be able to use during winter time, and also makes a lot of other cool items Haraku can use around the house. Winter finally arrives, but thanks to the preparations he made, Haraku is able to make it through just fine. The dogs are all cozy inside, but Zabuton might be hibernating or something since he hasn't come down from his hut in a while. Everything seems to be going well for now, but there's one big problem. Haraku hasn't spoken to an actual person in a long time. He's starting to get really lonely, and even fears that he might forget how to talk. Shortly after, spring arrives. The puppies, who have now grown, venture into the forest to find girlfriends. It doesn't take them long to meet other forest dogs, and they quickly come back and introduce them to Haraku. On top of that, Zabuton appears to have given birth. Haraku knows this means more mouths to feed, so he realizes he'll have to work even harder to keep up with everything. Just then, Zabuton sounds the warning alarm. Haraku immediately understands that something unusual is happening in the forest, so he ventures in to investigate. While exploring, he spots a little girl cowering by a tree. The moment moment she sees him, she calls out for help. Haraku walks over to her to ask what's going on, but as soon as he gets close, she grabs him and bites his neck. Now, this kind of thing is exactly the kind of scenario Haraku is into, so he blushes a bit. The girl then undergoes a transformation. Her clothes change into a nice outfit, and she appears much older. However, Haraku's dogs immediately start attacking her. Seeing her as a threat, she reacts defensively, but Haraku quickly urges the dogs to stop immediately. The girl then explains to Haraku that she bit him because it's the only way she can recover her strength. She also says that she got attacked in the first place because she thought she could take on one of the dogs. Seeing this, Haraku realizes she's harmless and even offers to let her drink some more of his blood. After that, he brings her over to his farm. She's surprised to see all the crops because she's never seen anything like them before. She takes a bite of a tomato and is genuinely impressed by the taste. The rest of the day is spent having fun and bonding. For Haraku, this is the first time in a long while that he's had human interaction, so he really enjoys spending time with her. At the end of the day, she introduces herself as Lucy, a vampire. She explains that she came to the forest to research medicinal herbs, but she got into a fight with some nobles who were trying to steal her research. She needed somewhere safe to hide, and the forest was the best option. Haraku notices her pull up a panel, which he assumes is magic. Clearly, magic must exist in this world. Thinking all this over, Haraku stares at Lucy and realizes he may never encounter a baddie like her again. Acting impulsively, he immediately proposes to Lucy, asking her to stay with him forever. He explains that the reason he set up his base here was so that he could live alone in peace, away from everyone else. Lucy blushes at this sudden proposal, but after thinking it over for a while, she agrees since she doesn't really have anywhere else to go. The next day, they both come out of the cabin after a rough night together. Lu asks what they're going to be doing today. Haraku says he was planning on checking on the fruit trees to see how they're growing. Lu says she'll join him, but she wants to freshen up first. After all that, they both sit down and start to discuss, but that's when Zabuton sounds the alarm. Haraku already knows what that means, so he and Lu venture into the forest to see what that's about. Haraku arrives and sees a scene that's all too familiar to him, a hot girl tied to a tree. On seeing Haraku, she screams, asking him for help. Haraku obviously unties her, and after he does, the girl uses her magic to freshen herself up. Meanwhile, Lu is silently trying to make a break for it, but the girl stops her, asking her to come over to her immediately. Apparently, they know each other. They both take her back to the hut, where Haraku comes to understand that she and Lu are in the same boat, both running away from the nobles. She introduces herself as Tia, an angel, and asks Lu who the guy with her is. Lu blushes while saying he's her husband. Haraku blushes as well, mostly because this is the first time she has ever called him that. Tia is really surprised to hear that. That aside, Haraku asks Tia why an angel like her was trying to track Lu down. Tia explains that, first of all, angels are more warriors than purely holy beings. Aside from that, there has been a giant bounty placed on Lu because of all the damage she caused when she went on a rampage. Back then, Lu would spend all her time researching strange medicines and concoctions, and then as soon as something bothered her, she would just start blowing things up. The nobles got so angry at that they placed a bounty on her head. Hearing all this, Lu admits that she might have gone a little too far back then, but she is surprised to hear Tia actually knows about it, because Lu is not the kind of person to show any sign of weakness. Lu explains it's because she realized firsthand how weak she was when she faced Haraku's dogs. That aside, she excitedly asks Tia if she wants to join them living in the forest. Tia hesitates for a few seconds but ultimately agrees. That aside, Lu shows Tia around the entire farm and even introduces her to Zabuton, but she doesn't seem to be a fan of spiders. Tia is going to be helping with some of the farm work too, so after a long day of harvesting crops, she is exhausted, but Tia and Lu use their magic to clean themselves up instantly, which makes Haraku wish he could really do that. They go inside, and Haraku gives Tia a taste of the strawberry he harvested that day. Tia finds it very delicious and adds that the farming work is a lot more fulfilling than she expected. That said, Tia makes up her mind and decides to stay here with them. In subsequent days, she begins helping them with the farming activities. Tia says she wants them to plant more strawberries, but Haraku tells her that won't be possible because they don't have the farming capacity or enough people to harvest them in addition to their other crops. Tia suggests they get more help on the farm, but Haraku doesn't think that would would be a good idea. He reasons that if they grow too much, they wouldn't be able to eat all they've harvested. As they walk, Haraku runs into more of Kiro and Yuki's grandpuppies. Grandpuppies because their own puppies went on to have puppies of their own. Zabuton's children have multiplied as well, but half of them decide to leave the forest to look for a better life, while the other half stay behind. Tia then speaks up, saying that she has a journey to embark on her own, but promises that she'll be back as soon as possible. At first, Haraku worries that she's about to abandon him, just like Zabuton's kids did, but she reassures him not to worry, saying she'll return soon. A couple of days later, Tia comes back just as she promised, but this time she brings some elf girls along with her. The one in charge introduces herself as Lee, and all of them have similar names because they're closely related. Lee explains that they came here because Tia suggested they come and stay with Haraku, so they ask if they can live here with them. Tia explains that the elves share a very sad backstory. They all used to live in a village far to the north, but their village was wiped out, and their race was scattered. Ever since then, they've been searching for a place to settle down and call home. Without a place to settle, they won't be able to repopulate their race and might eventually go extinct. Because of this, they all beg Haraku to let them stay with him. Haraku thinks about it for a while and then tells them that there are already a lot of different species living here, so as long as they promise to get along with everyone, it's fine. The elves agree, but are curious about who the other species are. Lu shows them Zabuton, the spider, and all of the elves faint in fright. Now that the number of people living there has increased, Haraku decides to start by making one big house for all of them to live in, since all 7 elves want to live together. Next, he makes a toilet and a garbage disposal area. The elves help with the construction, and in about 10 days, everything is complete. As Haraku sees them all sitting in the dining area with smiles on their faces, he says he really hopes this place will become a space that is comfortable and safe for everyone. It doesn't take long for the elves to get accustomed to life on the farm. They begin harvesting crops and tasting them to figure out which ones they like and which ones they don't. One day, while Haraku and Lee are segmenting crops, Haraku is surprised to find out that even though Lee is an elf, she uses fire and eats meat. He's shocked because he always thought elves were creatures who lived in harmony with nature, only eating fruit from trees and refusing to wear anything made of metal. Upon hearing his thoughts, Lee's expression turns serious. She tells Haraku that if he chooses to live like that, thinking elves are gentle tree dwellers, it won't be long before he's dead in this forest. The next day, Haraku is about to begin his farming work for the day, but that's when Zabuton draws his attention and shows him the giant queen bee she caught. At first, Haraku thought Zabuton would just eat it, but Zabuton says she wants to keep it as a pet. Haraku doesn't have a problem with that, so he builds a house for the queen bee and her worker bees. The worker bees are normal sized, while the queen bee is the only one who is large. After that, Haraku spent more of his time digging the space for the reservoir, but the major problem for him was getting the water to the reservoir. That's when Lee gives him the idea of building a pipe that leads all the way from the river to the reservoir space. So with that idea, everyone begins working together in mass production mode, and after a little while, the pipe leading to the reservoir has successfully been built and connected as the water is seen flowing in. Some fishes get carried along, so Haraku roasts them and decides they use them for their lunch. Tia and Lu see the fish Haraku is using and recognize them to be a very ferocious species from the Forest of Death, so they wonder if it's even safe for them to eat it. Haraku offers them to eat, but they refuse, saying he should take the first bite. Someone has to be the guinea pig, and it's definitely not going to be them. Haraku tastes the fish and remarks, saying it's delicious. After that, Tia and Lu taste some and agree with Haraku, saying it's delicious. Everyone ended up enjoying the fish, so he prepared all the fish he had and used it for their meal. They even ended up catching a lot more than they could eat at once, so they just preserved the rest with some salt and kept it in their pantry. Up next, now that they have a water reservoir, Haraku decides to make a rice paddy where they would be able to harvest some rice. He starts up by digging a regular-looking farm plot. Then he fills both plots with water. He then asks for the help of the elves to plant each individual rice stalk. Not long before, the rice paddy is now fully grown and ready for harvest. It ended up growing a lot faster than Haraku expected. Then after, they harvest the rice using their scythes and store the stalks in the house. But that's not the end of it. Haraku spends the next hour threshing the rice until it's now become fine grains of rice. Lu and Tia observe the group gruesome process involved in rice making and wonder whether it's even worth it at this point. But Haraku assures them, saying it's very worth it. After that, Haraku goes outside to cook the rice, and after it's done, he makes them into rice balls and serves them on a tray, asking Lu and Tia to give it a try. They all taste the rice balls and find it to be really delicious. He used the fish from earlier to make filling for the rice balls. Even though the elves end up eating all the rice balls, Haraku is just happy to see that they liked it. Next time, he'll probably even do a different filling. The next day, after a long day of work at the rice paddy, everyone else uses their magic to clean themselves up, which makes Haraku kind of jealous of them. So because of that, he decides to make a bath. It shouldn't be that hard since he already made a waterway. That said, Haraku begins construction, but after a little while, he realizes that a huge problem is where their bath water is going to go after they're done bathing. He doesn't think it would be right for them to just dump it back into the river. Hearing that, Tia comes up with a solution of using cleaner slimes to purify their bath water, then they'll be able to use it again. On top of that, Tia believes the cleaner slimes would also be helpful when it comes to cleaning the bathrooms. Now they don't have to do it themselves anymore. With that problem out of the way, they successfully construct the bath at the end of the day. Haraku takes his clothes off to demonstrate how the bath is being used. So he goes inside and first of all rinses his body before he goes inside the tub to take a dip. On seeing that, all the girls get inside the bath with Haraku, saying it feels nice taking a bath with him. This is the kind of thing Haraku fantasized about in his former life, so all he can do is stay quiet. The next day, Lee brings some of the other elves from her village, who ask Haraku if it'll be okay for them to stay in the village like Lee is doing. Haraku doesn't have any complaints, so he agrees. Lee suggests they immediately start making preparations to make a new house for the incoming elves to live in. Lee is really excited. She says she's really happy they're finally going to be able to repopulate their race. Haraku isn't sure how they're going to make children since all the elves are girls, but he feels it's nice to see them so optimistic. Meanwhile, Kuro watches the scene and sees that Haraku is already expanding his harem again. This makes him think back to how his life was so miserable before he met Haraku. After he and his family got their butts kicked by a bear monster, they were wounded and had no reason to keep going. But that's when they came across Haraku. At first, they thought of him to just be some weak human, but after they saw the immense power the almighty farming tool carried, they immediately began to respect him. Haraku was kind enough to take them in as one of his own, so Kuro is very grateful. But what he doesn't know is that their species are terrifying monsters known as the Inferno Wolves. But they don't have any intention of harming him, so they feel everything should be fine. A couple of days go by and their new and improved house is now complete since they had to make adaptations for the new elf residents. The house is a giant mansion with Haraku's room being the best since he's the founder of their village. The girls give Haraku a tour of the house and he's loving every part of it. The girls have their own rooms and Haraku is delighted to see they're happy with how things turned out. Then he notices a room that has a bolt lock on it, so he wonders what could be in there. He opens it and sees two beds joined together. Realizing what that is, Haraku closes the door slowly, saying he's going to pretend he didn't see that. After the tour is over, Lee tells Haraku that if he feels any part of the house isn't to his liking, he should just tell her and she'll make arrangements for it. So as a finishing touch to the house, he added two statues of the dogs in front of the house for aesthetic effect. The next day, Haraku plans on making some curry, so he goes out to the farm with Tia and Lu to pick out some of the fresh ingredients for it. But after he's done selecting the ingredients, he finds out that they ditched him because they find making their curry from scratch is kind of lame. Haraku is now left to prepare all the curry by himself, but Lee joins him after a while, saying she'd love to help him out. So with that, they begin the curry making process right from setting the oil to frying the beef. Now all that's left is for them to cover the pot and let it simmer until it's done. But that's when Haraku realizes he forgot to make the naan wraps for the curry. He knows naan takes a while to make, so he starts to consider just making rice, but he changes his mind back to making naan because it's been a while he's had it and he's craving, even though that would mean he has to prepare it for everyone including all the elves. Still, he knows it's going to be sundown, so he immediately gets to work because he doesn't have time to waste. The curry is almost ready, so Tia and Lu can already smell the tempting aroma coming from there and wonder whether that's the curry Haraku was blabbing about earlier. It's now dinner time at sunset, so as they taste the curry and naan, they admit that it's really delicious delicious and commend Haraku, saying he has real talent for cooking. Haraku is just glad to see that they're really enjoying his cooking. Winter is gradually drawing near again, so Haraku and the others begin making preparations for the winter by preserving their meat and storing their vegetables. That day, Haraku sees Lu using her fire magic to smoke their meat. This makes Haraku wish he could use magic, so he tries using it but fails woefully. That night, Haraku strikes up a conversation with Lee, where he admits how cool he thinks they all are because they can use magic, while he does just farm and cook. However, Lee tells him that he's the most impressive out of them all because he managed to survive through the forest up until this point all on his own. That's not something that just anyone can do. Hearing this lightens Haraku's mood a bit, making him realize he's important to them as well. Shortly after, winter arrives and snow begins to pile up outside. Because of this, the group spends most of their time indoors. To pass the time, Haraku decides to make some board games like chess, mahjong, and reversi. After he explains the rules of reversi, Lu immediately finds it to be a rather simple game, but Tia quickly tells her it only looks simple because of the way the game is structured, and that during actual gameplay, strategies are what really matter the most. With that said, things suddenly get heated as Lu challenges Tia to a game on the spot. Meanwhile, in another room, the atmosphere is the complete opposite. Things are calm as Lee and one of the other elves quietly play their own game of reversi in silence. Just then, Kuro steps in and casually gives Lee a tip on a move she should make. Seeing this, Haraku is surprised that Kuro actually knows the rules of the game, which he never expected. After a while though, the board games start to get boring, so Haraku puts together a bowling set to mix things up. He demonstrates by showing off his bowling skills, but since he's a bit rusty, he ends up missing 2 pins. Still, Haraku isn't sure whether it's because of the simplicity of the games or just the novelty of it all, but every single game he introduced to them turned out to be a huge hit, and just like that, the group spends their entire winter together inside, playing games day after day. But those winter days don't last long, because before they know it, spring quickly arrives. One morning, Haraku and the girls step outside, planning to talk about what they're going to do today. But that's when Zabuton suddenly sounds the alarm. They all rush toward the direction of the alarm and spot a massive wyvern flying straight toward them. Seeing the wyvern attacking, Lee and the other elves rush over to the crop farm to try to minimize the damage being done. In that moment, Tia and Lu are left completely speechless because they don't know what to do. They doubt they're strong enough to break through the wyvern's barrier. Meanwhile, Haraku is standing there, desperately trying to think of a decision to make. His first thought is that maybe they should run away, but he quickly realizes that wouldn't work, since the wyvern could easily just follow them from the sky. Haraku knows he has to do something, and he has to do it now, or else both the village and the crops are going to be destroyed. Protecting everyone is the only thing on his mind at this point. So, he takes out his almighty farming tool, and right before their eyes, it transforms into a cool-looking spear. Without hesitation, Haraku throws the spear directly at the wyvern. To everyone's surprise, the spear is powerful enough to completely shatter the wyvern's barrier and take it down with a single strike. Lu and Tia are stunned. They can't believe what they just witnessed. Neither of them had any idea Haraku possessed such overwhelming power. After the wyvern is defeated, everyone manages to put out the fires in the crop fields. Some damage was done to the crops, but fortunately, it's only minimal. After that, the group heads into the forest to check on the wyvern's corpse. The first thing that comes to Haraku's mind as he looks at it is whether or not they can eat it. In this world, wyvern meat is actually a well-known delicacy, so Haraku wastes no time putting it to use and prepares a delicious lunch for everyone. Lu always assumed wyvern meat would be tough and chewy, but to her surprise, it's incredibly tender. As they eat, Lu turns to Tia and reminds her of Haraku's spear strike. She then asks if Tia thinks she would be able to block that kind of attack if it were ever aimed at her. Tia quickly shakes her head and admits that there's no way she could. The spear was so powerful, it not only pierced the wyvern's barrier, but also went straight through its chest in a single strike. Meanwhile, in the Demon Kingdom, Bezel, one of the 4 great generals, holds a meeting with his fellow generals, Randon and Grat. He tells them about the wyvern being taken down with a single blow. Both Randon and Gratz are shocked, unable to believe that such destructive power actually exists in the world. Randon, however, isn't interested in testing it. He firmly believes that kind of power would be impossible for them to handle, and trying to fight against it would only get them killed. Without hesitation, Randon stands up, announces his resignation, and walks out of the meeting. Back in the forest, Haraku, still thinking about their meal from the other day, realizes there's one thing missing: wine. His plan for today is to start making some. He gathers a large amount of grapes and tosses them into a big bucket, having the girls stomp on them to extract the juice. By the end of the day, they've managed to fill 16 barrels with grape juice. Now all that's left is to let it ferment and wait for it to turn into wine. Meanwhile, up in the divine realm, the god who originally brought Haraku into this world is being scolded by his own daughter, the goddess of agriculture. She berates him for screwing things up yet again, this time by dropping Haraku into the forest of death. The god tries to defend himself, insisting that Haraku is actually having fun there and doing just fine, but his daughter doesn't buy it. She continues to lecture him, adding that on top of everything, he even went so far as to give Haraku a replica of the Holy Lance Grime. What she points out is terrifying, even though Haraku is only using it for farming right now. That lance is capable of draining all of Haraku's life force and killing him instantly. However, the god insists that it's unlikely anything bad will happen to Haraku because he gave him a body with extremely high regenerative properties. With that kind of body, Haraku should be just fine. Even after hearing that, the goddess of agriculture still can't shake off the fact that her father messed up. To make sure he learns his lesson, she punishes him by sending him to stand in the corner for 300 years, telling him to spend that time reflecting on everything he's done wrong. The very next day in the forest, Zabidon suddenly sounds the alarm and rushes ahead. Following the signal, they discover yet another girl tied to a tree. Lu quickly recognizes her. It turns out the girl is her own sister, Flora. Haraku takes Flora back to the house, and there she explains the situation. Apparently, Lu had a bounty on her head, and Flora came into the forest to look for her. Since Lu is married to Haraku, that technically makes Flora his sister-in-law. Haraku properly welcomes her, serving one of his best dishes and telling her she's welcome to stay with them for as long as she likes. Flora, just like Lu, is extremely passionate about research. After a few days of staying with them, she sets off to prepare her own research site. About a month later, Flora returns, but this time Haraku is stunned to see she's not alone. She's brought along a large group of maids, her loyal underlings. The head maid introduces herself as Anne, bows respectfully, and tells Haraku that they all wish to live here with everyone else. She also adds that he should feel free to put them to use however he sees fit. Not only that, but Flora's group even brought cows with them. Haraku is thrilled by this addition, because now they'll finally be able to make butter and cheese. Seeing this, Tia starts to feel a little left out, realizing she's the only one who hasn't brought along her own underlings yet. Wanting to fix that, she sets off into the forest and eventually comes back with an army of angels and lizard men. To top it off, they even bring a chicken with them, which makes Haraku extremely happy, because now they'll be able to enjoy eggs too. The roles in the growing village are quickly organized. The angels are put in charge of security, keeping everyone safe from threats in the forest. The lizard men are assigned to heavy outdoor labor that requires brute strength. Their leader, Daga, stands out thanks to the scarf Haraku ties around his arm. Otherwise, Haraku can't tell any of them apart. Not long after, Lee also brings even more elves to join them. But Haraku can't help noticing that among all the elves she brought, there aren't any men, only women. Curious, he asks Lee about it. Lee explains that not many male elves survived, but she brushes it off as no problem, saying they'll just make more eventually. Haraku, not wanting to ask any further questions about how they plan to do that, simply gives them a thumbs up and leaves it at that. With the rapid increase in the number of residents, Haraku realizes his little place has now grown into a full-blown village. He decides to name it the Great Tree Village, with himself serving as the mayor. That night, everyone throws a big party to celebrate the occasion, dancing together while singing old-timey songs, enjoying their new life as a thriving community. The next day, one of the angels comes up to Haraku and informs him that a messenger from the demon army has arrived to see them. The messenger turns out to be none other than Bezel. He explains that he wants to discuss their settlement with whoever is in charge of the village. Haraku realizes that this is his first real duty as the mayor of Great Tree Village, so he steps forward and declares that he's the one in charge. Bezel begins by offering Haraku a gift, then says he has a few questions regarding their settlement. Hearing this, Haraku immediately remembers what Lu once told him, that all the land in this area, including the one they've settled on, actually belongs to the Demon King. That makes him wonder wonder, did the Demon King send Bezel to kick them out, or is he here to demand taxes? Either way, Haraku knows this is one of the biggest decisions he'll have to make as mayor. After thinking carefully, Haraku tells Bezel that if the Demon King has any complaints about them being here, they're willing to pay a 10% tax for using the land. But he adds an important condition: the tax will only come from revenue generated on the crop farm, not from the animals. Bezel freezes for a moment at hearing this, shuddering at the low number. Seeing his reaction, Haraku wonders if maybe 10% really is too low, but in the next moment, Bezel anxiously agrees to the offer. They head inside, sign the paperwork, and Bezel leaves for the Demon Kingdom. After he's gone, Haraku asks the girls how he did. They tell him he did a fantastic job, since the usual tax rate is around 60 to 70%, but he somehow managed to lock in a deal for only 10%. On top of that, paying the tax means they now have the protection of the demon army. Meanwhile, back at the demon army's headquarters, Bezel is reporting to the other generals, and they're all shaking in their boots. Bezel explains that he saw Haraku, the village mayor, standing alongside Lu, the vampire princess, Tia, the angel of annihilation, and a pack of inferno wolves. Just seeing those forces alone made it no surprise that they were able to defeat a wyvern. What shocked him even more was the fact that they willingly agreed to pay tax and become part of the Demon King's protection, despite their obvious strength. Even though the tax rate was absurdly low, Bezel knew he couldn't refuse. It was better to collect a little than risk them becoming enemies of the Demon Kingdom. Upon hearing this, Randon once again stands up and announces he's resigning immediately. The very next day, Drime, the Lord of Dragons, comes to pay a visit to Great Tree Village. His servant steps forward and presents Haraku with a gift, a cool-looking sword. Haraku accepts the gift, but asks why they traveled all the way to his village. The servant explains that Drime's lair is located a bit farther south. They aren't exactly close neighbors, but still close enough that Drime thought it proper to come by and pay them a visit. Drime then changes into his human form and properly introduces himself. Haraku and the others invite him inside and treat him to some wine, but Drime drinks so much that he gets completely drunk, loudly declaring that he's going to stay here forever and never go back to his lair. His servant quickly tells him that wouldn't be such a good idea, since staying here permanently would probably just turn him into a nuisance for everyone. Realizing the truth in those words, Drime sobers up a bit, then flies back home at the end of the night. The following day, Haraku reflects on Drime's visit. As much as he enjoyed hosting him, Haraku admits he doesn't like the idea of random visitors constantly coming into their home. So, he suggests that they build a guest house large enough to accommodate about 30 people, a place specifically meant for receiving visitors. As the construction of the guest house began, they also came up with a new system just for visitors. Zabuton would ring a bell when guests arrived and strike a slab if enemies showed up. On top of that, they even formed a welcoming party whose job was to greet anyone who visited. After a little while, their preparations were complete, and soon enough, they received their first guests. This time, it was a group of beastmen. Lu went out to welcome them, but she instantly noticed that something felt strange about this group. She then revealed that she had sensed some of them hiding in the woods. However, Garf, the leader of the beastmen, quickly apologized, saying that the hidden ones must have followed without his permission. Lu accepted the excuse, but warned them to be careful during their stay. Once they were inside, the beastmen were impressed by the decorations of the guest house. Even so, the girls couldn't shake the suspicion that these beastmen were really enemies in disguise. For one, they hadn't brought any greeting gift like the other visitors had, and second, there were the two beastmen hiding in the forest. Because of these red flags, the girls decided to tone down the hospitality and purposely serve them a subpar meal. Haraku honestly felt a little guilty about this, but he went along with it. Later, though, it turned out the beastmen weren't trying to trick anyone at all. In fact, they were there to discuss trade relations. Garf explained that their village wasn't interested in typical economic trade, but rather physical exchange. He then asked if Haraku's village could come to their village instead for trading. He explained that traveling here had been very difficult and carrying goods back and forth would be far too much trouble. The beastmen dealt in things like paints, silverware, and glassware, all items that Haraku found fascinating. He immediately said he wanted to buy everything. Just like that, the two sides came to an agreement. Drime even offered to handle the transport in exchange for a barrel of wine. Since Haraku, as mayor, couldn't be the one to make the first trade trip, Tia volunteered to go instead. A few days later, she returned with Drime and proudly proudly announced that the trade had been a success. All the products had been exchanged as agreed. Along with that, she also mentioned that the Beast Village's mayor had asked if some of their people could move here. Haraku thought about it and admitted that extra workers would be helpful, so he agreed. Tia then revealed that the group consisted of 20 teenage girls. Haraku froze when he heard this, realizing that their own village already had mostly women. If this went on, the future of the village would be in danger. Because of that, he firmly said he would only accept them if the Beastmen also sent at least 2 young men. Not long after, the Beastmen arrived, and their leader, a teenage girl named Sina, nervously greeted Haraku. She told him that he could use her however he liked as long as he didn't abandon her. Haraku just smiled kindly and reassured her that she didn't have to worry about being kicked out. Hearing that, Sina smiled back in relief. Afterward, Haraku asked about the young men he had requested. Sina then revealed 2 boys, but they were only 11 years old, though much younger than Haraku expected. He looked at them and realized they represented the future of the village from now on. Sina and the other Beastmen at first thought they would be treated like trash here, but to their surprise, Haraku and everyone else have been nothing but kind. Because of that, they're actually enjoying their stay, though it will still take some time for them to get used to living among so many different species. One day, while Haraku is watching the Beast kids play, the ground suddenly shakes with a powerful earthquake. An angel quickly descends and informs him that the shaking is being caused by a bear and a viper locked in a brutal battle not far from the village. The angel wonders whether they should interfere or simply observe, while Haraku, on the other hand, is busy thinking about whether the creatures would taste good to eat. The angel then flies Haraku to the forest where the fight is happening. Once lowered closer to the battle, Haraku lands a single strike with his spear and instantly takes down both beasts. The other angels are shocked, amazed that Haraku is so powerful when they had never expected it. They haul the bear and viper back to the village, where their meat is prepared into a delicious lunch. The fried viper tastes almost exactly like chicken tenders, so Haraku decides it needs a proper dip. Right away, he sets out to make some mayonnaise, and once it's ready, Flora tries it and is impressed with how good it is. After that, Haraku moves on to his next project, miso. He and Flora work together to prepare a batch, roll the mixture into balls, and store them in a barrel in the basement to ferment for months until it develops its full flavor. Just then, Lu comes to tell Haraku that visitors have arrived. The newcomers turn out to be a group of elder dwarves led by a rough-looking man named Donovan. They had heard rumors that the Great Tree Village was producing quality wine, so they came hoping to share some. Haraku is willing, but Lu immediately interrupts, saying they can't just give their wine away for free. Donovan admits that they don't have money to pay, but instead, they can offer technology in exchange. He explains that since the village produces so many crops, his people can show them how to turn those crops into alcohol. To prove it, the dwarves demonstrate by using the process of distillation to transform corn into corn whiskey. Haraku tries a sip and admits it tastes authentic, though a little too strong for him. After this, both sides strike an agreement, and the dwarves officially join the Great Tree Village. To celebrate, they hold a big welcoming party. Everyone drinks and celebrates together, while Haraku is especially happy that there are finally some men in the village. This means the elves can freely reproduce without worry. During the party, Haraku leans over to Donovan and asks if there's any lady in the village that's caught his interest. Donovan admits that while all the women here are beautiful, they're not really his type. He says he prefers his women with thick, full beards. At that, Haraku just sighs in defeat. The next day, Haraku is going about his usual routine when he suddenly notices a giant dragon approaching the village. His first instinct is to take it down immediately, but before he can act, Drime shows up and confronts the dragon himself. Haraku thinks everything is handled now, until he looks back and sees yet another dragon coming in from the distance. Knowing that it's his duty to protect the village, Haraku quickly draws his spear and hurls it at one of the dragons. The attack nearly lands, but the dragon dodges at the very last second. Haraku prepares to throw a second spear, but Drime's servant rushes forward and yells for him to stop. He explains that the 2 dragons are none other than Drime's wife and daughter. After the misunderstanding is clear, cleared, the dragons transform into their human forms. Drime's wife introduces herself as Graphaloon, and his daughter introduces herself as Lasty. Graphaloon explains that she had grown suspicious because she noticed Drime sneaking out late at night and assumed he was cheating on her. This time, she decided to follow him to finally uncover the truth. Hearing this, Haraku quickly clarifies that Drime wasn't cheating at all. He was simply coming to the village to drink. Graphaloon realizes her mistake, but argues she can't be blamed for suspecting him. After all, he was leaving in the middle of the night without saying anything, and even taking items from the treasury along the way. Once everything is cleared up, she and Lasty both apologize to Haraku for causing such a commotion. Haraku assures them it's no problem at all and says he's just glad that everyone has made peace. Afterward, Drime quietly tells Graphaloon that it's extremely important to maintain a good relationship with the Great Tree Village. He admits that the village has enough power to overthrow their entire force if things ever turned hostile. Hearing that, Graphaloon decides it would be best if their daughter, Lasty, stayed in the village for a while. She believes this will ensure that their relationship remains positive and also help Lasty learn from the experience. Haraku has no objections and welcomes her to the village. That's how Lasty began her new life there. But things don't go as smoothly as they did with the others who had joined before. Many of the residents are uneasy around her because of her intimidating dragon heritage. To make use of her presence, Haraku appoints her to handle negotiations with visitors. The first test comes when Bezel arrives once again. The moment he lays eyes on Lasty, he trembles in fear, so much so that he agrees to every single offer on the spot, desperate not to upset her. Seeing how well this worked out, Haraku smirks, realizing he made the perfect choice in putting Lasty in that role. Bezel later returns to the Demon Kingdom and reports what he saw. The generals panic, realizing that the Great Tree Village now has dragons among its allies. Wanting to evaluate their military strength more closely, Bezel decides to send his daughter, Florim, to spy on them. Before long, Florim arrives at the village. Since Bezel had already mentioned beforehand that his daughter would be staying there, everyone accepts her with open arms. As the day goes on, Florim carefully evaluates the village's military power, only to be stunned by what she discovers. She realizes they have enough strength to completely wipe out the entire Demon Kingdom if they chose to. Curious, she wonders what kind of person could be leading such a place. Her curiosity turns into shock when she learns that the mayor of the village, Haraku, is actually a human. Lasty quickly warns her not to underestimate him, explaining that Haraku is strong enough to even take on someone like her mother. Just hearing this makes Florim shudder. From that point on, she is completely convinced of Haraku's strength. She begins treating him with great respect and becomes very stiff and formal whenever she speaks to him. A couple of weeks later, autumn rolls in, and with it comes the promise of plenty of delicious meals. Everyone gathers in the kitchen to prepare a hearty breakfast, but halfway through, they all realize something is missing: seafood. Lou remembers that she knows a merchant who can supply them with some, so they quickly set out on a journey south to make the request. 3 days later, the head merchant of Shishido City in the Demon Kingdom arrives at the village in response to their request. He thanks them first for calling on his services and then proudly displays the wide variety of seafood he brought with him. Haraku is delighted with the selection. The merchant, who introduces himself as Michael, then explains that he has 3 reasons for coming. The first is to properly greet Haraku and thank him for choosing their services. The second is to suggest new opportunities for trade and business with their village. And the third, his biggest hope, is to become the official government purveyor for the Great Tree Village. That would mean he alone would handle all of their trading affairs. Michael points out the quality of their crops and confidently says he can sell them at several times their normal value if entrusted with the role. Haraku and the others talk it over, and they find his reasoning convincing, so they agree to it. Once everything is settled, they see him off, and Michael mounts the village's dragon to fly back home. As he departs, Tia admits that Michael seemed reliable and didn't give off any feeling of trying to deceive them. Haraku adds that he hopes their relationship with him continues smoothly. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Michael drops his cool and composed act the moment he's out of sight. He trembles in relief, thanking the gods that he managed to make it out alive after dealing with the intimidating people of the Great Tree Village. Back at the village, Haraku wastes no time putting the seafood to use, preparing a delicious meal that everyone enjoys, but their peaceful moment doesn't last long before they know it. Another dragon suddenly appears and begins attacking the village. Haraku doesn't hesitate. He raises uses his almighty spear and takes the dragon down with ease. When he goes into the forest to see if the dragon's meat can be cooked, he finds that the beast has shifted into its human form. To his surprise, the dragon turns out to be Dryme's older sister, Hakurin. Hakurin explains that she had once heard Dryme drunkenly saying he would give his daughter to Haraku as a bride. Curious, she decided to come here herself to see what kind of man Haraku really was. Haraku is baffled because he doesn't remember agreeing to any such arrangement. Dryme sheepishly admits that he did say it, but only because he was drunk at the time. Haraku then asks Hakurin why she didn't just introduce herself normally. She laughs and replies that she had always heard about how strong the village mayor was, so she wanted to test him first. Haraku doesn't hold it against her, but he does tell her that before she enters the village, she'll need to clean up the mess she caused during her little test. Once she finishes tidying up, she is welcomed to the guest house, where she is served dinner. She fits right in with the others almost immediately. After eating, Hakurin casually mentions that she heard the game Mahjong is quite popular among them. She insists on playing. Haraku assumes she doesn't know the rules and offers to explain them, but Hakurin waves him off, saying she'll just figure it out as they go. To make things more exciting, she suggests they place a bet on the outcome of the game. But Haraku doesn't really have anything worth betting, so he suggests they just play strip mahjong, where the loser of each round has to take off a piece of clothing. Surprisingly, everyone agrees to it. Shortly after, the game begins, and the tension in the room is thick. The dragons are all extremely competitive and absolutely hate losing, so this strip mahjong turns into a very serious battle. Haraku notices something strange. Hakurin is completely new to mahjong, and she's also wearing the least amount of clothing compared to the others, yet she plays with an almost dangerous level of confidence. Ever since the game started, Haraku has been focusing hard on racking up points, but something feels off. He keeps losing every single round. Before long, he's already down to just his tidy whities. He starts suspecting that Hakurin must be using her magic to cheat, but then again, if she really was cheating, someone else would have caught on by now. Just when Haraku is at his lowest, the perfect chance presents itself. If he plays his next move correctly, he'll be able to flip the entire game in one shot. With hope in his heart, he throws down his Mahjong tile, only for his bad luck to strike again. The tile ends up ruining his plan, and he loses yet another round. The girls immediately burst out chanting for him to take off his pants, and since Haraku is a man of his word, he does so, standing there in nothing but his shame, revealing his bite-sized wiener for all to see. Meanwhile, in the Demon Kingdom, Bezel and the other generals are growing increasingly concerned. The Great Tree Village has now acquired Hakurin, a dragon known for her incredible power, and this makes them feel threatened. As they discuss their options, Galgardo interrupts with his own worries. His daughter has been acting moody and unpredictable lately, and he's not sure what's going on with her. Randon, however, takes one look at the situation and realizes they don't stand a chance at victory. Without another word, he leaves behind a letter of resignation on the table and simply vanishes. Back in the village, Hakurin is fitting in surprisingly well with everyone. She decides to stay for a while, and to Haraku's surprise, she's skilled enough to handle almost any job assigned to her. That said, she never stops complaining about the tasks she's given. Ironically, despite her whining, she ends up being the one to teach the children reading, writing, and even math. Later that day, a group of hot, naked Lamia girls suddenly arrive at the village seeking help. They explain to Haraku that some younger monsters attempted to clear out a dungeon they had found in the forest, which forced the Lamias to flee from their homes. Desperate, they came all the way here asking for aid and protection. Haraku figures there's no way they can just turn them away, so they make a deal. The Lamias will trade the precious gems they mined in exchange for the village's crops. After that, the Lamia girls prepare to head back to their original homes. Before they leave, however, Haraku insists they put on some clothes if they ever plan on visiting again. He hands them fabric, which they tie around their chest areas as makeshift tops. From then on, the Lamia girls set up a delivery service and start trading goods regularly with the village. With all these new developments and good fortune piling up, Haraku can't help but feel like the village is finally evolving to the next level. Meanwhile, in the Demon Kingdom, Princess Yuri hears rumors that Florum has been convinced to remain in the Great Tree Village. Some even claim she's being held hostage by whoever runs the place. Fired up by these half-truths, Yuri declares that they have no choice but to attack the village and take Florum back. At the same time, Bezel arrives at the village to inform Florum about this reckless plan. He explains that Yuri's followers have filled her head with lies, leading her to think Florum is being kept against her will. Florum, hearing this, admits it's a foolish idea. She knows their army would stand no chance against the sheer strength the Great Tree Village commands. Bezel agrees, fully aware of the gap in power, and tells her she's the only one who can prevent this invasion before it spirals out of control. The attack is scheduled for tomorrow, so Florum needs to act fast and convince the army to back down. When the demon army arrives, Florum has the Lamia girls confront them. The sight of the Lamia instantly terrifies the soldiers, making them realize just how hopeless a battle against this village would be. Following that, the three girls who pushed the princess into this invasion, Rosalind, Jolena, and Clacase, are dragged before Haraku. In front of him, Florum declares that they've chosen to remain in the village for now, working under his command. She also tells him plainly that if they ever try to harm the village, he should feel free to dispose of them. The three freeze in fear at her words. As for Princess Yuri, she bows her head and submits as well. Florum explains to Haraku that the princess isn't here to cause trouble, only to observe and see how life in the village is run. Yuri herself asks not to be treated any differently, insisting that he treat her like everyone else. With that, she begins her stay. The next day, Florum takes Yuri on a tour of the village. The princess marvels at the different crops and the way everything is managed so peacefully. But unlike her, the other girls are completely miserable. As nobles, they hate the idea of living in such a secluded place, far from luxury. That night, they secretly attempt to escape, but the wolves and spiders are already on guard and block every route. Realizing there's no way out, the girls give up and decide the only option is to behave themselves until they're eventually allowed to return home. Meanwhile, Yuri continues her tour with Florum. She admits she feels like a fool for ever considering war against such a peaceful and well-run village. Still, she points out it wasn't entirely her fault. Florum also vanished from the Demon Kingdom without any explanation, leaving everyone worried. With no word from her, the town hall girls convinced Yuri she had been captured. Florum realizes the misunderstanding is her responsibility and promises to keep Yuri informed from now on. Over time, the girls slowly adjust to life in the village. They find satisfaction in the work assigned to them and begin to settle into their new roles. As for Yuri, she spends her last day working alongside the beast children in the fields. When the farm girls try to stop her, insisting a princess shouldn't be doing such labor, they quickly realize her status was supposed to remain a secret and silence themselves. Yuri doesn't mind, she enjoys the hard work, admitting it's been a long time since she's felt this alive. At the end of the day, it's time for her to return home. She thanks everyone warmly, promises to visit again, and leaves the Great Tree Village with newfound respect for both Haraku and his people. As for the other girls, they had by now grown surprisingly accustomed to life in the Great Tree Village. What started as reluctance slowly turned into comfort, and eventually they insisted on staying for a while longer. Yuri didn't object in the slightest. She simply left them behind, saying they could do as they pleased, and made her way back to the Demon Kingdom on her own. Not long after Yuri's departure, the village began its pre-winter crop harvest. The yield was massive, so much so that the storage areas couldn't possibly contain it all. Faced with this problem, Lasti stepped forward and asked if she could send a portion of the extra harvest to her father. Haraku thought it over, then gave her his approval. Right after that, Hakurin spoke up, saying she also wanted to deliver some of the surplus to her parents who lived in the south. Haraku agreed to that as well, so Hakurin set out on her journey carrying supplies. When she returned, however, she didn't come back alone. With her was a group of mountain elves who had followed her, hoping to settle in the village. Their leader, a woman named Ya, explained their situation. Normally, they lived peacefully in the mountains, but recently their food supplies had become scarce and survival had grown difficult. Hearing this, Haraku considered their plight seriously before agreeing to let them stay in the village. Ya was overjoyed at his generosity. She declared that she would even be willing to sleep on the floor if that's what it took. But Haraku immediately stopped her, saying there was no way he would allow that. He promised to arrange proper accommodations for all of them. From that moment, Ya felt deeply indebted to Haraku for his hospitality, determined to repay him. She tried her very best to be helpful around the village. Unfortunately, every attempt ended in complete failure, and instead of being useful, she often caused more problems. One day, while Haraku was working, he casually mentioned that he needed clay for a project. Hearing this, Ya took it upon herself to head into the forest forest alone, swearing she wouldn't return until she had found some. After some time, she came back proudly carrying clay in her arms, and Haraku was delighted by her success. During her search, Ya had also stumbled across something unusual, a nearby dungeon, one that seemed very different from the ones the Lamia girls lived in. She reported this to Haraku, who, intrigued, decided to send out a survey party to investigate. However, he specifically instructed them not to do anything drastic. The survey team returned shortly after with alarming news. They had discovered evidence of a blood viper living inside the dungeon. Since blood viper meat was said to be extremely valuable, they immediately suggested forming an extermination party and heading north to take it down. Haraku, however, told them such a matter needed to be discussed and agreed upon by the whole village before taking action. Before long, winter arrived. As the cold season set in, everyone began to notice that Lu hadn't been feeling well. She had been unusually sick, often vomiting and looking pale. At first, no one connected the dots, but after a while, the truth dawned on them. Lu wasn't just sick, she was pregnant. Ever since the news broke that Lu was pregnant, the whole village's mood brightened. Spirits were high, everyone seemed cheerful, and even Haraku found himself acting differently. Now that he realized he was about to become a father, he knew it was time to step up and take real responsibility. He began giving Lu extra care and attention, always making sure she was comfortable. But Lu, calm as ever, reassured him not to worry so much. She insisted she'd be just fine. About an hour later, Anne finished preparing breakfast for everyone. The only problem was, there were simply too many people to fit into the dining hall at once, so the meal had to be divided into 3 separate groups. The first group included Haraku himself along with the leaders of each species. The second group was made up of the regular members, while the third group consisted of those who couldn't fit into the second seating. In the middle of all this, Grandmarian, the angel, arrived to deliver her daily report. She explained that just the day before, a group of killer rabbits had attempted to invade the village. Fortunately, the wolves had been there to stop them. To her, this was a positive outcome since it meant they now had plenty of rabbit meat to use in their meals. Listening to her, Haraku couldn't help noticing something. The angels were always disciplined and professional when carrying out their duties, but the moment their work ended and they were left to their own time, they slipped straight into full-on laziness. They were terrible with everyday chores, but they more than made up for it by keeping the village safe from outside threats. Later in the afternoon, after Haraku wrapped up his chores, lunchtime rolled around. Anne and the other maids served the meals they had prepared, but this time Haraku noticed something interesting. For many in this world, eating 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, felt unusual. Most of them were used to eating just 1 meal. For the elves especially, it was shocking. Many of them feared that Haraku's insistence on frequent meals would deplete the food reserves too quickly. Once lunch was done, Haraku got back to work. This time, he decided to try something new, planting tulips. Until now, his focus had been strictly on growing crops for survival, but he wanted to bring more beauty to the village as well. Beyond that, Haraku also started organizing regular combat training sessions for the younger villagers, even though he doubted they'd ever need it. Considering how well protected the village was, he thought it would be better for them to be prepared. When dinner time came, the maids proudly unveiled a brand new dish they had tried making. Haraku tasted it and found it absolutely disgusting, but not wanting to crush their spirits, he forced a smile and gave them a thumbs up of approval. Dinner gatherings had now grown into such large events that they also doubled as opportunities for villagers to make announcements or reports. That evening, Florum approached Haraku with some news. She explained that Yuri had sent a letter. In it, Yuri requested more of the village's apples as well as clothing made from the soft cloth Zabuton wove. Florum added that she intended to tell Yuri to stop making so many selfish demands, but Haraku shook his head, saying it was fine. He was sure Zabuton wouldn't mind making some clothes for her. Meanwhile, the dwarves continued working on their alcohol production. They informed Haraku that in order to improve the quality of their brew, they'd need 3 times as many grapes as they were currently producing. Haraku went to scout the fields, trying to figure out how he could possibly increase production. That's when Sina came running up to him with urgent news that a strange man had suddenly appeared in the village. Haraku rushed to the scene and was shocked to see the man bowing before the statues he had made of the gods. What surprised him most was how this stranger had managed to enter the village without any of the security forces noticing. Lu then stepped closer, and upon seeing the man's face, she froze in recognition. She revealed that the man was none other than Vargreif, the progenitor of the vampires. Vargreif turned around, greeted Lu warmly, and then was escorted by Haraku to the guest house. Once seated, Vargreif explained the reason for his sudden visit. He had heard rumors that Lu was pregnant and simply had to see it for himself. At first, he hadn't believed she was the type to settle down with a human and have a child, but now that he saw her here, he realized he had been mistaken. Curious, Haraku asked Lu what Vargreif had meant when he called himself a progenitor. Lu explained that it was like being a grandfather figure to all vampires. Vargreif himself added that he was over 4,000 years old, and the key to his long life was his unusual practice of erasing parts of his own memory from time to time. He would keep only the essential details like his name and traits, while erasing everything else, freeing up more space in his mind. Haraku found the idea terrifying, but Vargreif assured him that although it was scary at first, eventually you grew used to it. Vargreif then apologized for arriving unannounced. He explained that he had felt the presence of something divine emanating from the village, and before he knew it, he was bowing before the statues. He admitted he had only ever seen God once, but since he had erased much of his memory, he no longer remembered what he looked like. Still, when he gazed at Haraku's statue, he was certain that was it. At that point, Haraku understood what Vargreif wanted. The progenitor desired the statue, but Haraku refused. He couldn't just give away what belonged to the entire village. Vargreif was visibly devastated, until Haraku quickly added that he could always make a new one for him. Delighted, Vargreif accepted. By the end of the day, Haraku had finished crafting a statue and gifted it to him. When Vargreif asked how much he owed for it, Haraku refused payment. Accepting money, he explained, would make it seem as though he were putting a price on God himself. Instead, he told Vargreif to simply take it as a gift. Grateful, Vargreif returned home with the statue. Back at his palace, Vargreif was greeted by his servants. He ordered them to discard the old god statue and replace it with the new one. When it was unveiled, the servant marveled at its craftsmanship, declaring it a pure work of art. He suggested the creator's name should be spread and honored, but Vargreif shook his head, saying the man who had made it wasn't interested in fame and preferred to live a quiet, peaceful life. Instead, he ordered that Haraku and his village be quietly rewarded. Every vampire would be instructed to show them respect. As a final gesture of celebration, Vargreif also sent the village a piano as a gift, saying it was his way of honoring Lu's pregnancy. The moment it arrived, everyone was thrilled, eager to try playing the beautiful new instrument. Episode 12. After that time, life in the village continued moving smoothly, and there were no complaints or troubles at all. Everyone was still doing their very best to look after Lu now that she was pregnant, even though Lu herself kept reassuring them not to worry. She trusted that she would be just fine and wanted everyone to relax. Still, the one thing that bothered her was the fact that she could no longer drink alcohol. Because of that, the villagers gathered before Haraku and suggested that they sell off all the alcohol in the village at once. They felt that if Lu saw them drinking while she herself was unable to, it would feel like torture for her. However, Haraku told them they might be overreacting and could regret selling everything later. Instead, he suggested that if they wanted to stop Lu from feeling tempted, they should simply store all the alcohol in barrels underground until she could drink again. Everyone agreed this was a smarter idea. Later that same day, out at the farm, Donovan and the other dwarves were a little upset. They noticed that the villagers had stopped drinking alcohol and wondered if maybe they had done something wrong in making it, or if people no longer liked the taste. Haraku quickly explained to them that it was nothing like that. The reason no one was drinking was simply because Lu could not, and everyone was supporting her by staying away from alcohol as well. The dwarves understood and were touched by the gesture, saying that this only motivated them to work even harder for the village. The very next day, while Lu stayed resting in her room, everyone in the village came by one to give her gifts. They brought everything from food to baby clothes that could be used after the child was born. By the end of the day, Lu was lying in bed, but she began to feel a little uncomfortable. That was when she suddenly realized her water had broken. As soon as they heard this, everyone in the house rushed around preparing hot water and towels so the delivery process could begin. Haraku, however, could not bear to watch, so he left and spent the entire night sleeping outside in the tree hole he had first made when he originally came to this world. The next morning, when Haraku went back into the house, he saw Lu holding their newborn son. Filled with emotion, he walked over and held the baby himself for the first time. Later, the two decided to name him Alfred, with the choice of name being entirely Lu's idea. A week passed after Alfred's birth, and Haraku found himself reflecting on how far the village had come. When he had first arrived in this world, he had been lonely and uncertain, but now he had friends, family, and an entire community around him. The village had only continued to grow, and he felt deeply grateful to the gods for everything that had happened. Realizing this, Haraku decided he needed to do something to thank everyone for their hard work. So the next day, he called a village meeting and announced that he had created a new system. He pulled out a small silver coin and explained that this would now be the official currency of their village, used for trading goods and other needs. Haraku had even taken the time to make each coin by hand so that counterfeits could not exist. Everyone found this to be an exciting idea and quickly got used to it. Some people began trading coins for things like furniture, clothing, and weapons, while others decided to save theirs instead. Before long, the villagers were comfortable using the coins. However, Haraku soon realized that it was still difficult to decide exactly how much a coin should be worth. At one point, one of the little beast girls came to him asking if she could buy a baby in exchange for a coin. Seeing this, Haraku realized that he would have to set some clear rules about what could and could not be purchased with money. But instead of turning her away, he simply made the beast girl the mayor for a day in exchange for her coin, much to everyone's amusement. Not long after that, the village held a great feast to celebrate the birth of Alfred. Everyone gathered together to eat, drink, and celebrate joyfully. As Haraku looked at the giant barrel of wine that had been brought out, he laughed and said he could not wait for the day when he would be able to drink wine together with his son. Lu, however, teased him by saying that the day he was waiting for might come a lot sooner than he thought. Meanwhile, news of Alfred's birth reached the Demon Kingdom. The four generals there had already realized that it was impossible for them to challenge the strength of the Great Tree Village. Because of that, they began to think the only way to maintain a steady relationship with them would be to marry off someone from the Demon Kingdom into the village. The Demon King himself, however, immediately saw where this discussion was heading, and he shouted in outrage that there was no way he was going to let Yuri be married off into that village. The next day, Haraku woke up feeling slightly hungover. That was when the village girls came to him and said they had something very important to tell him. When they went inside to talk, they explained that a group of people living in the nearby forest had come forward, saying they wanted to move into the village. These people had been driven out of their own homes because of war, and their numbers were around 100. Hearing this, Haraku realized that if they were really going to accept that many people, they would need to build an entirely new village. Lu then suggested that the new place could be called Great Tree Village too. Haraku thought this would be a huge amount of work, but the others did not mind at all. They answered with enthusiasm, saying that they were willing to try their very best. And so, everyone began making plans on how the new village would be built. This was the end. Subscribe to not miss more recaps and watch the next video on screen.